Alexander Spesivtsev, Russian serial killer, rapist, and cannibal. He raped, tortured, killed, and ate women and kids in 1991 and from February to October of 1996. There are 4 proven killings on his account. Initially, he was accused of 19. The exact amount of his crimes still remains a mystery. According to some sources, the maniac dealt with more than 100 victims. All of the crimes happened in Alexander's hometown, Novokuznetsk. It is unique that he killed all of his victims in his house. His mother helped him in committing all of these atrocities, and his sister, who was inside of their apartment at the time of each murder, in the future didn't receive any punishment. Alexander Spesivtsev was born on the 1st of March, 1970 in the city Novokuznetsk, where he lived with his mother Lyudmila, his father Nikolai, and his older sister Nadezhda. His father was an alcoholic, beat up and cheated on his wife, but they broke up only 15 years later with no official divorce papers. Subsequently, Spesivtsev committed all of his crimes in his parents' 3-room apartment. Alexander Spesivtsev was born underweight and oftenly got sick in his younger years. Until he was 12 years old, he slept in his mother's bed. He could be counted as a mischievous child, but his mother always defended him. When Lyudmila Spesivtseva was fired from her position as a caretaker at a school for theft of bathroom equipment, she got a job as a lawyer's assistant in court. She liked to bring back home pictures of dead bodies from criminal cases and examine them with her son for a long time. The criminal cases replaced books from Alexander. Later he said that he had a strange feeling when he was looking at the pictures. Spesivtsev's sister was working as a secretary in the same exact court. In 1988, Spesivtsev was put in for mandatory treatment in the Novokuznetsk Psychiatric Hospital No. 12. In 1991, Alexander met a girl, Yevgenia Guselnikova. They went for walks together. He read her poetry, but once he beat her up and she decided to break up with him. Then, he decided to lock her inside of his apartment for a month and brutally tortured her. According to the official version, she died of sepsis. Her body was fully covered with purulent abscess, because of which the doctors didn't establish the true cause of death. The doctors found out that Spesivtsev is in need of psychiatric treatment, and in 1992, according to the decision of the Novokuznetsk State Court, he was sent to the Orlov Psychiatric Clinic with the schizophrenia diagnosis. 3 years later, Spesivtsev was discharged from the hospital with signs of remission. There was no record of his discharge, and law enforcement believed that he was still in the clinic. He was also very worried about the non-healing information of the penis, because in the clinic, at his own request, one of his roommates sewed a pallet into it. Alexander's first victim after his release from the psychiatric hospital was a small girl whose name was Lyudmila. In order to hide the evidence, Spesivtsev dismembered the body, and his mother buried the remains of the body in an abandoned lot. According to the indictment, Spesivtsev killed 15 more people in his apartment from April to August of 1996. His neighbor, Lydia Vedenina, who was a pensioner, called the police several times in the beginning of the summer. She was bothered by a putrid smell and deafeningly loud music that was coming from the Spesivtsev apartment. She urged the police to check what was going on, but nobody arrived. The last 3 victims of the maniac were dragged into the apartment by the maniac's mother, asking for help to open a door on September 24th of 1996. Spesivtsev immediately killed 13-year-old Nastya, who tried to hit him in order to save her life. 2 others were chained using homemade handcuffs, brutally tortured, abused, and raped. This lasted around a month until he made one girl cut open the body of the other one and eat her flesh. While all of this was happening, the apartment was frequently visited by Alexander's mother and his sister, who saw what Alexander was doing but couldn't do anything with it. Later, he cruelly killed 13-year-old Zhenya and forced the last victim, 15-year-old Olga, to dismember the body and eat soup made with her own friend's meat with him. Zhenia's bones were gnawed by Spesivtsev dog right on Olga's eyes. Spesivtsev wasn't caught on purpose. During a planned bypass before the winter heating season, a team of plumbers knocked on the maniac's apartment door. He refused to let them in, explaining himself that he is locked inside because of his psychiatric disorder. The plumbers called a district police officer that broke the door. The operatives found a girl's torso with no arms and legs in the bathroom, and in the bathtub they saw a chopped-off head and ribcage. Spesivtsev himself managed to escape to the house roof. However, 2 days later, he was arrested in front of his commie block. After being released from captivity, 15-year-old Oля Galtseva, taken hostage by the maniac, managed to give detailed testimony against him and died 3 days later in the hospital from peritonitis and pulmonary edema. One of the graves made by the Spesivtsev family in a lot between the Pedagogical Institute and a dance floor was discovered by the police even before their arrest in June 1996. Around 70 different fragments of children's bodies were found there. The experts determined that they belonged to 15 kids from the age of 3 to 14. At that time, Spesivtsev stayed quiet, and soon in the city of Tolyatti, a series of brutal killings and rapes of children happened that were similar to Spesivtsev's method. The maniac was easily found. It turned out to be unemployed Oleg Rylkov. At first, he was mistaken as a maniac from Novokuznetsk. However, later 3 more victims went missing after his arrest. The files of psychiatric clinics were checked, but Spesivtsev did not come to the attention of the investigation due to a bureaucratic error. According to the documents, he was still being treated at the Oryol Psychiatric Hospital. In total, Spesivtsev was accused of 19 murders. He admitted them, but then retracted his words. The investigation was able to prove his participation in only 4 crimes. An expensive genetic examination was needed to identify the remains of the bodies. A forensic laboratory was called to Novokuznetsk, which occupied a carriage of a passenger train, but there weren't enough funds for a comprehensive study. The exact number of Spesivtsev victims wasn't identified. During the search in his apartment, around 40 jewelry pieces and 82 sets of bloody clothes, as well as several pictures of unknown naked children were found. Not all of the personal belongings were identified by the relatives of the children who died at the hands of the maniac. According to an operative officer of the Russian Ministry of International Affairs, Spesivtsev's main motive in committing all of the crimes was the desire to mock his victims, because while threatening with a knife and forcing the girls into sexual intercourse, he made them beg for mercy, which caused Spesivtsev to feel his own significance and pride. In 1997, for the murder of 3 girls, Spesivtsev, who was recognized as having committed this crime in a state of sanity, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 1998, consideration of a new case began under Article 208 of the Criminal Code of the Russian Federation, organization of an illegal armed group. In the State Scientific Center for Social and Forensic Psychiatry, named after V.P. Serbsky, Spesivtsev underwent a new psychiatric examination and was found to have committed the first murder in a state of insanity. According to a new court decision, the murderer was sent for compulsory treatment to the Volgograd Psychiatric Hospital of a special type with intensive supervision, Volgograd Region, Kamyshinsky District, Dvoryanskaya Village. According to the first deputy head of the Russian Ministry of International Affairs for Novokuznetsk, Alexander Kolomets, if Spesivtsev recovers, he faces a long prison term for the crimes that he committed in a state of sanity. Spesivtsev's mother, 60-year-old Lyudmila Yakovleva, admitted that she dragged the girls to his son and then buried their remains. The prosecution insisted on 15 years in prison for her, and the defense asked for Spesivtseva to be completely acquitted. Spesivtseva herself pleaded not guilty. The court found her guilty of complicity in 3 murders and sentenced her to 13 years in prison with detention in a penal colony. In 2008, She was released and has recently been living with her daughter in one of the villages near the town of Osinniki. Spesivtsev's sister, despite the fact that she also took part in the crimes, didn't receive any punishment. As of January 2020, Alexander and Lyudmila Spesivtsev were both alive.